All right, folks, and welcome back to the show here, the True Patriot Podcast. It is with a tremendous amount of excitement and honor on our side that we have to welcome to our show professional bass angler Matt Steffen. Matt, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is by far, you are the name, man. You are my headliner. On the fishing side of things, you are my goat at this point. So no pressure.
No pressure. You need to talk to all my sponsors then and let them know that.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, hopefully we can help with that. Yeah, as our audience grows, man, that's what we're here for. So for those folks in the audience out there that are watching, that are kind of new to the sport of bass fishing, that I'm like the only guy they know that has, tried to venture out on that. And that's on a lot of my local scene here. We get that just because bass fishing is not a huge thing in Colorado. There is an underground and there's definitely dedicated for sure, but it's nothing like back there, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Midwest, where it's part of a lifestyle. For those of you that don't know, Matt is a professional bass angler. This is what he does for a living. He chases green and brown fish all around the country, and he's done this for a lot of years. And he is currently, you are fishing with the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit. That's correct? Yeah. Are you fishing the opens at all, or?
I'm currently on the waiting list. I'm a lifetime bass member. And that used to be all you needed. You could sign up on the Lifetime Bass Member Day and you'd get into the opens, but I'm currently sitting on the waiting list. So we'll see. I don't know if it doesn't happen, I'll concentrate more on my YouTube on my off time for the opens and concentrate on the pro circuit stuff.
I hear you. Good for them. That means obviously participation's up. Good for the sport, but yeah, kind of goofy on the choice piece there. But nevertheless, how long has this been? You've obviously been fishing your entire life, but how long have you been a professional doing this only in your life?
Yeah, so I've fished at the professional level for the last 11 years. This will be my 12th year, I believe, and during that time, the first handful of years, I was working a corporate job as well. And then I went completely to full-time fishing in the 2015 season. So this will probably be my 7th year.
Wow.
Where it's my primary source of income.
Right. And how did that transition happen? I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that, and we'll get into this, they look to see what is that bridge for them, where does that happen and so forth. But how did that transition happen for you when you decided, that's it, I'm turning in my briefcase and my lunch hour and I'm going all in?
Man, it was, so fishing has always been in my blood. Like ever since I was a little kid, I'm talking, like, it just was something that I just always resonated with me. And through college, I spent a ton of time fishing. That was before college fishing was out there. And then I got done with college and I got into fishing just a ton of local tournaments. I was fishing probably 20 tournaments a year on the weekends. And they were mostly in Wisconsin because I went to school up here in Wisconsin, and I was back in Chicago because that's where I was born and raised. So I was living in Chicago and working in downtown Chicago, but every weekend I was coming up to fish tournaments. And I got pretty good at it. I was pretty much won at some point most local and regional tournaments that we have here. And I got an opportunity back in 2011. So the economy had taken a tank in 08, 09, all that. And FLW actually had some spots because there were anglers that weren't coming back to fish. And I had a buddy that was fishing it, and he's like, come do it. I think you'll be all right. And I think you'll be able to, to do it. You can room with me. We'll cut costs, blah, blah, blah. So I signed up and did it. And at that point, I was working as a financial investigator at the Chicago Board of Trade, which later merged with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So I had a pretty big corporate role. And for that first 4 or 5 years, I was, the tournaments are all in the spring, right? So they're about 3 weeks apart. Well, before I went to a tournament, I'd spend the week before busting my butt to try to get caught up at work. my corporate job and try to do my research for the lake I was going to. You come back, you spend the next week trying to catch up at the corporate job from being gone for a week. And then like the next week you're doing the catch up thing. And I got to the point where I was really comfortable with my corporate job. I felt like my fishing was close, but not where I wanted it to be. And I got to the point where I'm like, I got to make a decision here. And, actually everyone, when I told like family members and friends that I was quitting my corporate job, which I had been at for that point, I think I was there for 12 years. I'd worked my way up to the point I was in management.
Oh,
It was a very, very good job. And I gave it up. I didn't even have really I didn't have Bridgeford. I didn't have any good paying sponsors at that point. I just knew I had gotten to the point where I was not happy in
right.
life. I did not enjoy riding the train downtown with the same group of people every day in the same seats. You get off the train, you walk the 4 blocks to the building. It's a horde. I just felt like we were all worker bees, all just marching together. 5 o'clock hit. We all came back, rode the train. It was just a tough thing. And I was not a happy person. And I had one day where my wife, who was working, she's a chiropractor, she was working at another clinic. She came home and she had a brutal day and I had a brutal day. And both of us were just fed up with where we were at. And we went to dinner, and on a napkin, we wrote down goals. And I wanted to be a professional fisherman full time. She wanted to have her own small chiropractic clinic. And at that point, that got the balls rolling. And 2
That's
years
awesome.
later, 2 years later, we're living in Wisconsin. She's got a small practice and I'm fishing full time. And,
Man, that is awesome. Awesome stuff. And I got to tell you, so much of that story just resonates. While I don't compete anywhere near the level you do right now, I knew myself that if I was going to have a shot at going up, I was going to need to be able to compete with that group of anglers that even at the AAA level was going all in. Because the last thing I wanted to do, and this is for folks that are on the outside of the sport, what they don't understand is that, in my opinion, 90% of our success on the water is a mental game. And if you're thinking about investigations and things in the financial world, I can tell you, even from my menial, little career that I had going at the time, if I'm thinking about work and I'm not thinking about what's going on around me out there, I'm missing the so many, like a wind change. I'm missing the fact that the clouds rolled in. It really does affect you. So yeah, that going all in factor, that is a huge, huge deal. And it's one thing to be good at something, but just because you're good at it doesn't mean you love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the financial piece there, that was definitely.
It really is one of those things. It's really hard to excel, to be great at something without fully devoting your time to it, let alone trying to do it in 2 separate fields that are just pulling you completely apart. And, I'm not saying, you can definitely be successful and multitask and have things all over the place. But, if you want to be at the top of your game and, in any sport, whether you consider fishing a true sport or not, like
Right.
basketball, the point is you gotta practice, right?
Yep.
You gotta be on the water and you gotta be fully there. And the last thing you want is, while you're out on the water during practice, getting a phone call and it's somebody back at your other job saying, "Hey, you got to walk me through this," or "You got to do that." Because that just takes you right out of the game. And then you're thinking about that. Well, you should be thinking about being on the water. And it's just, I knew for myself that I needed to either go all in or decide to continue doing what I was doing, working a corporate job, and go back to fishing more local and regional stuff, which I was making, good money. I was making a lot of money fishing local tournaments. I mean, if you're really successful at it, you can make decent money doing that. I knew that I would not be happy if I looked back 10 years later and said, what could have been. And
Man, isn't that the truth?
I needed to try it. I didn't want to have any regrets. Fishing is in my blood. Like, I mean, it's what I I eat, sleep, and breathe, right? So I knew I needed to try this. And I got to tell you, I was really close to dumping out. My third year, my first 3 years on tour, I finished the end of the year, I was in the 70s or 80s in points. And that's out of 150, 160 guys. So I was right smack in the middle all 3 years, which, I would cash, I don't know, roughly three checks. I'd have three checks and then three bombs. And that doesn't sound that bad, but you got to remember, I didn't have any sponsor support. I took my local tournament winnings and rolled them into my first year as a professional, and then just basically spun my wheels for 3 years. But it was to the point where, from a straight payout to entry fee standpoint, I was breaking even. But when you figure in the additional expenses,
Right.
and the fact that every day of vacation I had was used selfishly, I used it to go to fishing instead of take vacations with my wife. I mean, it really weighed on me. Like I had two tournaments left my third year. I had just had a bomb, and I was sitting really bad in points. And I on the way home, I called my wife. I said, I think I'm done for the year. Instead of paying my deposits, I'm just going to bail. And she, like the number one supporter I have, she goes, no, you're not. And I said, why not? She goes, you're not quitting halfway through the year. If you want to quit at the end of the year, you can do it, but you're finishing the year. And I went on, I finished,
she's not just a supporter, man. She's a coach.
Yeah. The last two tournaments, went to Grand Lake. I finished, I think 20th. I made my first, top 20 cut is what it was at that point. And then the next tournament was like Chickamauga, and I finished 27th. And, I drove home from Chickamauga that year. In my point standings, I was still back, like whatever, 80th, 75th,
Sure.
something like that. But I just drove home and I was ready to go to the next tournament. I was chomping
awesome.
at the bit. And since that year, I have never finished worse than 41st in the points. I've made the championship, whether it was the Forest Wood Cup or what we call the title championship now, 7 of the last 8 years. And the year I missed it, I actually finished 37th. And that was the only time in the 20 some years of FLW MLF history that they haven't taken, I think it was 39 guys or more.
Oh,
And it's,
wow.
at that point, they took the top 35, but there were always like 5 double qualifiers. And for whatever reason that year, there were not. So even though I didn't make the championship, I finished in the points good enough, what most years would have been, or every other year would have been good enough to make the championship. So my fishing, since I quit my job, my fishing has dramatically improved. I feel like I get better every year. And I honestly feel like I'm right on the verge of really just continuously being in the mix for wins.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you, from being one of those guys on the outside that looks to the pros, for knowledge and advice, that you have always been on a radar. And when your YouTube content started to increase in the amount of time that you had, were releasing video content, dude, you've saved me mentally. I don't know how many times out there. I jumped in even at the BFL level, which is, still a regional, but for me, it's a little different just because I was coming out of Minnesota fishing the Ozarks. Now I'm in Colorado fishing the Ozarks, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. Those are the things that we're going to be hitting. And I'm actually going to come back up there to Winneconne. I've got some unfinished business at that little deal there that I have to get 3 years ago. Had the game plan. My buddy and I, we had figured it out up the Wolf. Things were there. Total change overnight. I was still learning, tournament day, don't count on anything being the same, that what it's been through the whole week. And I missed 2 minor adjustments there. And I only ended up bringing in 4 fish back to that thing. And I knew that had I put that 5th one in there, man, we were top 5 for the day. We would have been there. That's been literally in my head for like the last 3 years now. So it's like, okay, we've got to go exercise the demons, from that. But so one of the pieces in this whole process, is that support system. And we talk about it on the veteran support services side, how important it is for them. And I've spoken with several of my nonprofits that we, from the competitive angling side, we get it, man. It is absolutely a team sport in that. That's why people always ask me when I say we, and it's like, well, two things. I've been a coach for about 18, 19 years of my life. And number two, so it's kind of born into my head to say we, but number two, it really is without my kids, without my wife, and I can only imagine with your schedule being, literally twice as difficult as mine. That it really does take them getting behind you and giving you that mental, stability, sometimes the push when you need it. So that is super cool. Like I said, your wife doesn't sound just like a supporter. She sounds like a coach, man. A lot of teams need her in there. That's awesome.
She really is. She's extremely into self-development, right? I mean,
Nice.
she's very just how can you become a better person, whether it's through your job or mindset, whatever it is. And she's really gotten me into that. Everything from, just eating healthy to a holistic lifestyle to a mindset lifestyle. I mean, I've spent time in the past for a couple of years. I was working with a meditation coach, and
nice.
Guys on tour. You tell some guys, and they're like, "Oh, really?" Like, some guys are into it, and some guys are like, "You're weird. Like, why would you do that?" But it's all based on what you said. It's all. I've always said 50%. You said 90% before is mental. I've always said 50% of it is straight in your head. You show up to a lot of tournaments, and half the people there don't think they have a shot. They don't have a shot because they don't believe they have a shot. So right off the bat, it's there. And for me, it was so when I roll into a local tournament with no practice, no anything, I roll in. And, this is going to sound cocky, but it's like, I feel like I'm there to take everyone's money. Like, I feel like you roll in, my mindset is just like that killer mindset, and when for years, my first several years on tour, I rolled into a professional event and I felt like I was the dog with the tail between his legs. Right. And even though I had some good tournaments, it was always like, God, how am I going to make this happen versus how am I going to make it happen today? Like, how am I going to win today versus how am I going to save the day? And that bothered me. So I worked with a meditation coach, and she was great. I mean, she did such a good job on working on my mental strength, because I call it the demons, in the boat, like you mentioned. Like when you get out on the water and stuff doesn't go the way you have it planned, it's just like the demons in your head just continually going. They're just talking to you the whole time, like, you're done. Might as well go back to the ranch. Like, it's just sitting on your shoulder all day. And I wanted to work on that and figure out ways to kick them off my shoulder and get me back to focusing. Because if you're focusing, it can happen really fast. But if you're not focusing and you're just going through the motions of casting and fishing, but you're just kind of out there doing it, you're not going to succeed the way you want to succeed. So, I mean, I've worked with my meditation coach in the past, and my wife's been a huge support with life in general for me. And yeah, you can't do it. It's one of those things that's the worst part about the sport is the travel and the time away from family. And if you don't have a supportive family, that makes it so much harder, because now you're away. They don't want you away, and they're telling you they don't want you away, which just makes it that much worse. And in my case, I'm very lucky, to have my wife who's able to keep home base under control while I'm gone. And
that's awesome.
We've managed to work it out pretty well, and it still amazes me when I look back on the fact that we both gave up really nice jobs. Like I mean, I look back on it and I go, we really were making a very high risk decision, but it's really, it's worked out well. I mean, it's funny how we went from being, we were much more financially well off, where it was like, okay, we go have a nice dinner, you blow a little bit of money and everything's good. And now, our stress was job related then. Now the only stress we have is more financial related, because both of us have jobs that are performance based. So if I don't do well, I'm not getting paid. If she, decides to sit on her butt at her chiropractic clinic and not bring in patients, then, we see it in our finances. And we've been very lucky to be able to make it work so far.
sick days cost money.
Yeah,
When you can't get out,
exactly what it is.
yeah.
It's like
No more
you
paid vacation, no more paid
yeah,
holidays.
exactly like that. Those are the discussions we have now. Well, if
Yep.
we go on vacation here, are we going to close like the clinic for 3 days or one day? What is it? Because that's lost revenue versus somebody else paying you to take that vacation.
Exactly.